today is all about the topic that Vivian and I has been curious about, and that's about thinking, because we've been in the quest for looking for ways that we can help people to improve their ability to think. And because we believe that our ability to think these days not increasing but diminishing. So every chance that we can talk to experts like you Terry or Simon, it's a good chance for us to figure out the secret sauce, pick your brain, and if the people listen to the conversation like this, they can reflect on something, learn something, and alter their way ability to think, then I believe that could help to change their way in a better way, and that is how we can help to build a better world ourselves. And thanks a lot for spending your afternoon, your morning with us and the audience of the Inside Sharing Show. We really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
And
lovely to be here.
Thanks a lot. And you guys are great thought leaders, and a lot of, with a lot of connections, a lot of works that you've been doing is involved into thinking, in deep thinking, critical thinking, in and we're gonna examine the topic of thinking and what the ways that we can help people to improve their ability to think together today. All right.
Perfect.
Good. All righty. So thanks a lot for that. I'll ask Ambassador Terry first, and this is regarding to everything. When we start, we should start with the basics, because I've been looking for a definition of thinking for a very long time, because all of us think, but the definition of thinking seems to be vague from differently understand by one person to the next. So in your opinion, what is thinking anyway?
Thinking is just drawing upon your personal thoughts based on your experiences in life. And, I'm often quoted how you and I have talked about this in the past too. Presence is the point where manifestation becomes action. So you remove the anxiety of the past and the fear of the future, and all you have is right here, right now, present. And when you're there, whatever it is that you're thinking about starts to come to light, and you start seeing answers and resources and new ideas that can generate whatever it is that you've been contemplating. And when you're able to do that, this place of presence is really a very calm place. Not a lot of anxiety there or happiness per se, but full focus and awareness of what your own thoughts and what it is that you're searching for. And so for me, thinking is going to that place.
How about you, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of echo that as well. For me, thinking is using your mind to consider something, to really, kind of ponder on what's going on around you. And for me, everything starts in our minds, right? Everything starts with our minds. So everything starts with our thoughts, and then that leads to our feelings and emotions, and that leads to our behaviors and symptoms. It's interesting. I've just done a program on neuroscience at the British Psychological Society, and the traditional way of thinking, which is what I've just said, that everything starts with our minds, is now being challenged by neuroscientists. And I know Terry would agree with this, that emotions and feelings are maybe more tied up with thinking than we thought. Maybe our gut feeling and our heart are more closely associated with our thinking, and in neuroscience now, people are saying that we don't just have one mind, we have three minds. Of course, we have one brain, right? This is our brain, and the mind is the electrical impulses in the brain, right? But also we have our heart and we have our gut feeling. And in neuroscience, there's this thing called the endocrine nervous system, which is in our gut, and that's directly connected through the vagus nerve to the back of the mind. And our heart as well is connected to the mind. So there's more and more discussion about, don't ever dismiss your gut feeling. My brain is 55 years old, right? But my gut feeling is the same as all of yours. It's 10,000s of years of old, because our gut feeling are shaped by the whole of humanity before us. So for me, thinking is not just what's in here. It's in what's in your heart and in your gut, if that makes sense.
Wow, that definitely makes sense. Thanks a lot for sharing the definition of thinking for the two of you, which leads to the next question that I'm always curious is that we will see a lot of people who are really, really good at thinking, and some is yet good at thinking, some is not even good at thinking at all. So what set one person ability to think better than the other person? Can you help answering that one first, Simon, since you already answered last time?
You know, I think from my experience, if you have a real passion for something, you know, if you really, really believe in something, I think it's easier to think more clearly, you know. And Angela Duckworth wrote a book called Grit, and she says the 4 key aspects of grit include passion. You need to have a sense of purpose. You need to persevere, keep working at it, and you need to have hope. And I personally think that if you really have a passion and what you're doing is your purpose, I think it's easier to think more clearly, you know, because I think you're less encumbered by doubt. The other thing then is decision making. You know, if an alien ever came to Earth and asked us, how do you know when you make the right decision, it's the right decision? The answer is a human being can't know, right? All you've got to go by is what Terry said before. You've got to go by your instinct, which is genetic, your intuition, which is what you've learned through your life, your observations, the mistakes you've learned. And then hopefully you can put all that together. And the next time you need to think and make the right decision, hopefully it's as close to being the best. So for me, it's impossible to guarantee that your thinking is right. But if you go based on all of those factors and you have a passion and a purpose and you're in the flow, I honestly think that clearer thinking just comes out. You know, I don't think you can force it. You know, that's my view.
So you think that we cannot force it? We have to let it, you know, into the natural stage for it to naturally coming out?
We can force our thoughts, but I do think that to have the really clearest thoughts, the thoughts that you're meant to be having, right? I think that they are the strongest thoughts, you know. And I think for me, you know, if you're truly willing and open-minded and self-honest about how you're feeling and thinking, I think you give yourself the best chance to have the most appropriate thoughts at any one time. That's my feeling. That's my strong view. Yeah.
What about you, Ambassador Terry?
You know, to mirror, we mirror each other a lot, Simon. You know that, right?
I know.
And, you know, I often say, make your decisions with your heart, use your soul for counsel and your brain for storage, right? And because your brain's got the ego and it's got a lot of other things going with it. And that kind of muddies the water, so to speak, when you're trying to make a decision. For me, coming from that heart place, lies, misconceptions, all those types of things don't lie there. They're not there. They're not present. They come from ego and other places. And when we determine or think about one person being smarter than another is a fallacy. That is just wrong thinking. And it's very limited belief thinking. And here's why. If you've ever spent time with a person who has never had formal education, but knows everything there is to know about fly fishing, that's a very smart person, okay? And so is a quantum physics professor, very smart person in what they do, okay? For me, higher math, it was all I could do to get through higher math in high school and college, and I mean it. And marketing and other business models, English, those types of things were relatively easy because I had an interest there. There was a passion, there was a presence to be there. And I think today's society, the Gen Z, Gen X, you know, these upcoming generations, they're of a higher vibration. They are more in tune with that inner presence that Simon was talking about. And because they are, they don't, you know, they're kinder people and they don't take any grief. you can't pull the wool over their eyes, to be very nice. There's other words to use, but and they have this. Okay, anything that's going on in the world at any one time is on film. Not even film, it's digital. Everywhere in the world, everybody in the world gets to see it. So the concept of being dishonest or to hide things is very, very hard to do anymore. Okay, and that has changed. It's just on a full speed roll. You know, it's not going to be too much longer before all of this stuff doesn't exist. You know, you'll think a thought and you'll be able to visualize it holographically in front of you. So, you know, there's just a lot of wonderful things going on. And where I'm going with this is, it's exciting for me as a person who's almost 70 years old to watch all of this happen. Okay, for me, when I was a kid, up until about age 10, I would pick up a phone and it was rotary dial, okay, wired to something. And there was a thing called a party line. I lived in a little complex and all of us were on one phone line, okay? So you had to pick up and listen to see if anybody was there, then you dial, okay? And everybody else would do the same thing. Well, that's good and bad. Good, you got your phone. Bad, because anybody could listen to you, you know? So conversations were, certain conversations just didn't happen, okay? So now, you know, we talk, well, look at us. We're on 3 continents right now talking live to each other and can see each other. We are in full presence of each other in this moment. Are we in full sensory mode? No, not necessarily. But what we do have, because of our sensory precepts, is we are fully aware of the energy and the presence of each other, even though we're on a flat screen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. I hope that answered your question.
Vivian, do you have any questions? Yes.
Ambassador Terry, so earlier you were saying if you can get rid of the anxiety in the past and the fear for future, live in the moment and think about it. I feel like that is the best thing to describe a children when in thinking process. They think at the moment and then time go by, they being shaped to think the way, put, you know, so many things and experience that they going through to alternate that kind of thing. And then when we're growing back, we are learning how to be like when we was a child again. So in your opinion, what changes and how can we get back into that stage?
That's a lovely quote. Boy, you guys are just running through my quotes just very nicely. I'm quoted in my work with adults with repetitive behavior situations, suicide ideation, imposter syndrome, PTSD, all those kinds of things. We're born with an already established personality, and it's based on love. If you ever see an infant laying on its back looking up, there's nothing but love, nothing. And so when that personality starts to grow and becomes witness to various stimuli around them, they become confused, they become scared, loud noises starts it off, screaming and yelling parents can diffuse them. The way the parents treat other people, all of that becomes them until they're up really into their late teens and for the most part late 20s, when I understand the brain is fully formed. At that point, the background or their upbringing no longer drives their behavior. Conscious decisions then drive their behavior. So, you know, that all of that stimulus from outside really shapes the way we will act and react in the world based on our own choices. And there are no good choices, no bad choices, they're simply choices. And we as human beings, because we're thinking beings, we can always change our mind. So we can change the choice. Right? I hope that answered your question, Viv.
Thank you.
How about you, Simon?
Yeah, it's a massive question, Vivian, and it's interesting. I studied this recently on this neuroscience program, and apparently, as far as we know, the only thing that newborn babies are frightened of, the only fear they have is heights. So if you hold up a newborn baby, they're aware of the height. They're not scared of the things that adults become scared of. They're not scared of public speaking or of elevators or sharks or flying. And so in our truest form, as kind of Terry said, whether you call it love or being your authentic self, young children are their authentic self, and but what happens is during our childhood and teens, we tend to pick up the anxieties and fears mainly from our parents, and the outside world. So we move from being our authentic self, when you're a young child. All of us here will probably remember this, although Terry and I, it's a further distance in the past. But when you're a young child, when you want something, you stamp your feet and you cry and you want to get it, right? So when you're a young child, what you think and what you say are aligned. The problem is when you get older, because we live in this world of expectation and we have to go to work and we have to, attract a partner and we have to keep a boss happy. We think less about ourselves and we think more about others. So we lose that authentic self and we become more living in a world of expectation. And then what happens is we talk about midlife crisis, around the 50s, 50 to 55. Terry and I are heading beyond this right now. We tend to, we often hear people saying, when you get older, you say what you think. I think we go back to that authentic self when we got older. But back to what you were saying before, what is thinking? At the pure biological level, when you think, your nerve cells are detecting information about the outside world, and then they're transmitting information to other nerve cells. That's the biology, right? The problem is that for some people, they might have built up bad habits or anxieties or fears, or they might have seen terrible things in childhood, right? And of course, that's going to impact those nerve cells in a damaging way sometimes. And I think that can obscure, that love-based thought or authentic thought, or it can make it, it can dislocate it a little bit. So the habits and the anxieties and fears we pick up, these things can shape and change the way we think, and that's why I think it's really important when Terry and I said at the start, is to go back and think about, what are you really passionate about? What's your purpose? If you don't, that's kind of getting you back to that authentic you. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a circular journey.
And how can we help to create that environment so that the people can, be more authentic in the way that they think, they say, earlier than the age of 50 or 55, like you say? Where can people like my age at 18 now, we can be authentic and share our thinkings?
That's a
Well,
good
for
question.
me, yeah, that is a good question. For me, it's whoever is the senior by whatever means, position, age, whatever, they get to be the role model they want to see in the people underneath them. Because if you've ever worked in a company or in a group or a team or anything where the leaders were very honest, ethical people, everybody in the team tended to be honest, ethical people, because we mirror the people that are around us. Just like when we're little kids, we learn how to do things and we have no concept of failure. How many times did you fail to stand up and walk before you did it? But did you care? No. It was no big deal. When we got to an age of where pass or fail, no, honey, you're doing it wrong. No, honey, this, no, don't do this, don't do that. Then fear and anxiety, because we failed to communicate with that person, the new person in the company or a baby, same principle. We fail to communicate to them. They're not failing. We just have a better, easier way of doing something that they're currently doing. And that limiting beliefs and pass, fail, him, her, yin, yang kind of thing is really losing its appeal to a lot of people. I think it was Mark Twain that said, always tell the truth, then you don't have to remember what you say, you know? And it's very valid because people in their 30s and younger, I would say, they are growing up, or they grew up in with a cell phone in their hand for basically, and so the concept of working in a company or being involved with dishonest people just doesn't drive home. You know, they don't like doing that. And, you know, the Great Resignation, like Simon and I have talked on air a number of times, that Great Resignation is around that. I'm not doing that anymore. I'll start my own company. I'll tell you what, I'll become a contractor. You'll pay me double what you're paying me right now, and I don't have to put up with any of your grief. That's what's the thinking out there. And that's not all bad. That makes us individual thinkers again. There's far too often when we're in a group environment, we start thinking like the group. The group becomes the mind. And when we are not following that concept, and younger people are not following that concept, then you have more interaction. More people are likely to go, you know what, I don't get what you're saying, you know, and not feel like they're stupid for raising their hand. They just don't understand, you know, and they're comfortable with asking a question because when it's all said and done, they want to know what they're doing and can move forward with confidence.
Wow. Wow. Thanks. Simon, your turn.
You know, there's two sides to this for me. The first side is saying to the younger generation, don't be afraid of being honest with yourself. You know, be honest with yourself, you know, and so don't be afraid of asking questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how. You know, the more you ask questions of others and yourself, the more chance I think you have of hopefully getting to the truth and sharpening your thinking. So that's the first thing. And that kind of leads into this whole area of growth mindset. You know, somebody with a fixed mindset would have an attitude that they have to be the best or they have to do this and that. And if they don't become the best, they become brittle, right? And then they avoid, they don't do things or they don't help others. Whereas somebody with a growth mindset is not afraid of making mistakes, is not afraid of constructive criticism because they see life as a journey, right? So it's asking yourself questions, giving yourself permission to make mistakes. You know, as long as you don't lie about your mistakes, as long as you don't keep repeating the same mistakes, as long as they're not too big. But I think that's important. The other thing then is around anxiety. You know, there's so much, as Terry said, with the social media world, the online world, there's so much more low to medium grade anxiety, right? So what I mean by that is, you know, in the olden days when human beings hunted and they ate what they hunted and they only lived in daylight for 9 or 10 hours a day and they didn't have the internet, you know, in the ancient days, our minds were much more focused, right? We weren't worrying about global news. We weren't worrying about Hollywood wives. We just focused, right? And I think today we're so distracted by low-grade anxiety that it stops us from thinking. So I think one of the things I think the younger generations need to do is to practice spending time away from the news, away from social media, and then do things like, you know, mindfulness, right? Mindfulness in the West has got a bad rap. I think a lot of people in the West think that mindfulness is about chilling out and tuning out, whereas traditionally mindfulness and meditation from the East, you know, from Japan and other places in the East, was the opposite. It was about stopping and going in on yourself and actually becoming more aware. So I think, you know, practicing more awareness and also healthy eating, lots of sleep, reading, you know, education. And so I think all of those things together, and exercise and being in nature. I mean, in Japan, they have a concept called forest bathing, whereby people walk in the forests, and neuroscience has demonstrated that the best thing you can do for your brain to heal your brain, to make it more focused, is to walk in forests, you know, to be with nature. And so, you know, I think my fear for the younger generations is the screens, but my hope for the younger generations is they'll realize that nature is out there, and they need to mind themselves. They need to mind themselves and mind their minds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing all of that, because when Vivian and I we've been interviewed for more over 400 people, like including the two of you, and then we start to break out, we start to see the pattern in the word thinking, and actually we're going to write a book together sharing that, and it's great. It's the acronym for, like the T is for time, so it's like we put in the time, and on the daily scheduling it, and
Yeah.
schedule time for thinking. And like you said earlier, is the H in here is the head and the heart. So let our head, our hearts, all lead the way. And like you say, also let our gut feelings also involve into that process. The I represent
That's your intuition and instinct. That's the I, your gut feeling.
yeah, yeah. We put in here is the imagination, but we would change it into the intuition and what else? Intuition and what?
Instinct.
Instinct. All right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the N is the represent for networking. So we expand our networks to expand our knowledge base and then tap into the unknown area. So I also have to expand our ability to think. And the K is the knowledge. So like the two of you, you learn the new ideas, you learn a new concept, you learn about neuroscience, so expand your thinking. And the ing also represent for the imagination. The N is nourishment, like you say, like get rid of
Nourishment. Yeah.
all the bad media, and practice meditation. So but the G in there is very, very surprise to us. So we run a poll on that one. It's called generosity. And when we ask a lot of people, they were very generous in sharing the information with the people in their network, outside of their networks, and that helped them to get a lot back in return, to help them to improve their ability to think. So we're gonna ask one very practical question again to you, Terry and Simon, and because we're talking in very generic, now we want to go to very specific. I would like to ask Ambassador Terry first for this. All right. So how have you been expanding your ability to think, Ambassador Terry, in your own ways?
Again, presence, right? You don't need to walk physically in the forest. You can look at a photograph and be sensually engaged with that, right? And it can offer a calming effect. A 30-second meditation can be as good as a 30-hour meditation. It's your completeness when you're done and how focused you are while you're there, And so when we're looking at this concept of presence and thinking, start with self. Once you give positive reinforcement, give you self-love, you start giving love, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And the more you give out, the more people receive it. And when they return that back to you, you have this massive amount of love coming back at you. So, it's start with self, and that's not being selfish, right? You start with self and love yourself. And Terry, I'm okay. I'm doing okay today. And, when it's a rough day, I say, I'm learning a lot today. And when it's a really terrific day, guess what? I'm still learning. Because in this life, once we get present with the fact that there isn't any good or bad, there's just a situation, there's choice, there's presence, and they're not good or bad, they are learning opportunities. So, if you successfully pass an examination in school, okay, you learned the knowledge that it took to pass that test, and you correctly filled out the test. So now you know how to do that test. The same thing is when you try something in your business or whatever that you're working on, and in old terms, you failed at it. Great. That's a super learning experience. There's nothing wrong with failure, okay? It's when you quit and go home and don't do anything else. That's really when you've stopped to exist. It's like the flower. It's gorgeous until it begins to, it's reached its maturity, and then it starts to die, right? We just don't go to the die part. We keep going. we change physically, but we keep going. And there's a point in time where we're going to end too, or ideally. They're working really well on doing stem cell research to rebuild your bodies. But, you know, day to day, it really boils down to this. I'm okay. I love me. And I love those around me. You know, there's an indigenous universal word. It's 3 syllables. Ta-hesh-da. Ta-hesh-da means family. Everything is family. My desk, all of you, this computer, the air I breathe is family. Now, family, you put up with more with family than you do with others, okay? So everything and everybody is family. Your mindset changes and you're less likely to go finger pointing and making divides. So that's my thoughts for that one.
I think that we have until you know, only until like 8:30 in my time. It's past 2 minutes already. I like to leave. You know, I know that Simon is busy with another assignment after that. So Simon, can you conclude this meeting with your answers for this?
Yeah, I was just thinking as Terry was talking, and for me, it kind of comes down to 7 things. And Terry's kind of mentioned the first one, and you've mentioned it, the importance of networking, of listening to other people, of not being too proud to take advice, of asking for help, and also sharing what you have. So bringing your ego down, but your self-esteem up. We can't do anything by ourselves. You're not going to think and learn by yourself, right? You might think you are, right? But the chances are it's not going to be right. The second thing then is exercise. Exercise is really important. It feeds your oxygen. It feeds your brain. The third thing then is creativity. You know, I force myself to write. I know Terry's written many more books than me, but I write a lot of training programs and I really consciously force my brain I push it, right? To think about the next concept, to think about how can I explain things, which helps build the neurotransmitters. The fourth thing then is laughing, you know, having fun, laughing, right? But laughing actually for me, it takes away the wrong intensity and brings us back to ourselves, you know. I think it feeds our ability to think more clearly. The next one then is self-love. And things like there's an acronym, HALT. Try not to allow yourself to get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? And so make sure you feed yourself well. Don't allow yourself to build resentments about people. Don't do things by yourself. That's loneliness. And don't allow yourself to get too tired. You need sleep, which is this is the 6th one. And then finally, for me, it's about growth mindset. It's about challenging myself and being open-minded and willing and self-honest, that the only way you can really grow is if you change. And to change, you have to go through a journey. You know, you can't just stay under your duvet and bed all day. You know, you might think you can, but you have to do difficult things sometimes, you know, to get a better sense of who you are. And then you can think next time, well, I can do it. So for me, it's those 7 things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks a lot for the 2 of you so generously to come to our show tonight and kick off our you know, like series of thinking and sharing all the knowledge you have around thinking, also the practice and how you do it yourself. And we really appreciate that, Ambassador Terry and Simon. Thank you very much for your generosity to join and sharing. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, you guys have a wonderful day. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye. Bye.